these three words don't catch your attention, I'm wondering if you actually are single. Men, sex, and money. Whoa, even if you're not single, that probably might interest you. So I hope you stick around for this whole episode because I have an amazing guest with a lot of interesting things to share about these three topics, about communication, about all kinds of things. And I think it's going to be some good insight that, we haven't really had yet on the Ghosted podcast. Hi, I'm Abby Rosenblum, founder of The Social Modern Matchmaking and your host of Ghosted, a podcast about making dating easy and fun again so you can find your boo. Get it? We'll talk with dating experts, coaches, and real clients of mine and single people from around the world. Stick around for corny jokes, dating advice, and deep dives into the psychology behind finding love. So I want to introduce Karen Solomon, a relationship and intimacy educator and coach, and she knows what it's like to suffer from a broken heart after divorce, feeling lost and needing to reinvent herself after her own divorce from an 18-year marriage. She became inspired to write Sexy, Sassy, and Starting Over. And she has all kinds of three-word combos that you're going to love. So today we're going to get all into that. And Karen, I'm so happy you're here with me today.
I'm thrilled to meet you. We're going to have some fun.
Yeah. I mean, we have, this is not our first meeting. We did have a little bit of prep because we needed to get to know each other. But yeah, I'm just really excited to share what you're up to. And, really our goal is just to hopefully give some wisdom to women and maybe men some insight too, if they aren't aware of what's going on in their own minds. So give us a little backstory. I know I gave people a taste that you had to kind of reinvent yourself after your divorce. So kind of pick us up. How did you come to this whole concept of men, sex, and money? And what brought you to want to coach younger women too?
Sounds good. Well, first of all, I was a younger woman, and there's a part of me that's still a younger woman. It doesn't really remember when my auntie was in her mid 80s and she was talking about her girlfriends. I was like, oh, I guess it will always feel that way.
Yeah.
So, I'm still a younger woman.
Yes, you are. Age is just a number.
Yeah, and then I say to people, I really am in my 60s. And you know what? Sure, I might not look it or act it, but I'm still in my 60s. So that said, it's just a number, but there's a lot of wisdom. And when I created the Men's Sex and Money, Abby, I had spent since a very long time, over 30 years. Well, actually my whole life, since my 20s, I've been in personal development. I've always wanted to know about the stuff that I don't know, that I didn't know that I didn't know. And I've been taking, I lived in San Francisco Bay Area, which is kind of the heart of transformational work, starting back in the 60s and 70s. And in the 80s, I took my first personal development class. So I was always open. And 30 years ago, one of my guy buddies, just a buddy, not a lover, not a boyfriend, said, hey, I need a +1 to go to this little event. So this little event was an intro to something called Tantra Intimacy. And he said, don't worry, it'll be clothes on. It's not a sexy thing. And I'm like, I'm always open to know what I didn't know about, right? Mm-hmm. So the only thing we took off were our shoes because it was a rainy night. And that night, there was a level of intimacy that we tapped into by standing just a little closer than handshake comfort in our culture when you meet somebody, to a man I'd never seen before, just leaning in, and it was like, bow and namaste, kind of like what we say hello. Namaste is the Sanskrit word for honoring the divine in another. Most of us learn it in a yoga class. Namaste, because yoga comes from Hindi and Sanskrit tradition. Namaste to this man, and hand on hearts and eye gazing. And, I was naughty girl in the 70s and all that, but it was kind of turn off the light, do your thing. This was fully clothed, not about sex, but about intimacy. Mm-hmm. And then it was say goodbye to this man, and now women step to your right. And now I'm in front of a new man. And by the fourth or fifth man, I realized, oh my God, I became unglued. I just started to cry. And the tears were based on a combination of joy and grief. Joy at what might be possible, allowing people to see me in my vulnerability, seeing another person in theirs, just seeing them, not making up a story, just being with them and seeing them. And the grief was what I hadn't known might be possible, like leave the lights on and look at this person, And so I dove in, became a little sales and marketing person for this group. And that led me to many, many, many studies since then with some lots of different tantra teachers, Margot Anand and Charles and Caroline Muir and David Data, who has many books like the Way of the Superior Man and other books. I think he's in Colorado actually, but I mean, many different teachers in the relationship realms. And I also made a subconscious decision that night when I was 35 years old. I thought, I'm going to meet a man who's also interested in diving deeply into intimate ways of connecting. And I met my former husband a couple of years later. And then fast forward, we had a beautiful kind of retreat home in Sonoma County. And I was at a workshop one day, just a thing. And the daughter of the man who was teaching the workshop, was a friend of mine, said, just graduated Stanford, beautiful 22-year-old woman. And she said, you're so easy to talk to about relationship stuff. May I spend some time with you? You know, my first professional hat was school teacher. I love to teach what I know that might be helpful for someone else to learn. And I thought, sure, when do you want to come and bring your friends? So we set up a date 3-4 weeks out from a Friday night to a Sunday night. It was a retreat house, as I said, with the pool and the hot tub. It was just beautiful. And I thought, what do these young women need to know? They need to know about men and the differences between men and women. And I'm talking about, in this case, heterosexual women who are looking for a male partnership. So I want to make that distinction because I don't want to be exclusive at all, but this is my story. So it was 9 young women were going to be coming, and I thought they need to know about men and women and the differences in communication. And they need to know about sex and everything about intimacy and about orgasm and about how to ask for what you want and how to say no kindly and consent and all those things. They need to know about sex, what feels good, how do you ask for it?
Mm-hmm.
And they need to know about money. When I say money, I'm talking about lifestyle choices. And one of my jokes for younger women is, when are you planning to tell him you wanted to be a stay-at-home mother and your salary disappears? Because in this country, they don't support stay-at-home mom for more than a month or two.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the more progressive companies do a little bit longer. But the truth is, if you truly want to be a stay-at-home mom and your salary was what helped you get that house, there could be a problem. That's a conversation that needs to happen, not when you're 6 months pregnant. So that's how the work was born. And those young women transformed, and I ended up coaching a bunch of them afterwards. And thus a body of work was born. It's been trademarked for a while, but mostly it is based on a lot of different bodies of work that, I take the salient points from many different teachers.
Right. And I'm sure from a lot of your experience too.
Oh, yes, that. Myriad, decades, yes.
So let's kind of break down each section. I think it'd be fun to dive into each of them. So starting with men. So, what do you see as the key differences between men and women in terms of communication?
I'm so glad you asked me, Abby.
Right, I'm just setting you up for this.
I just happen to have a really good answer for this. And anybody who's listening and not driving, either take out your notes on your iPhone or whatever, or grab a pad of paper. So here's the thing. The biggest number one difference, if you can remember this, is that when a man doubts himself, he usually doubts his ability to produce something. To produce the sperm that can make the baby, to produce the best orgasm in his woman, to produce the best house, the best promotion, the most beautiful children, the best golf game, to be the best sailor, the best win the race, has to have the best dog with the best, but he's producing. And think about it the way and for women, by the way, I'll come swing back to the men. What do we doubt ourselves about? Our attraction. And I'm not just saying, does my hair look pretty today? But think about it for a second. He has an outie. What does the outie do? It squirts. What do we have? An innie. What does the innie do? It attracts. Okay?
Yeah.
Who goes into heat? Doggies and kitties. Most of us have had pets, and if you don't get them neutered or spayed, it's like, oh no, she's in heat. Quick, lock all the doors. Because the biological imperative is for her to attract, and for him going, where's Fifi? Where's Fifi? Where's Fifi? And it's really what happens, okay? Mm-hmm. So it's like, if that's the biggest difference, and again, it's not just superficial with us women. If let's say I'm working at a company and I'm selling these pens, okay? Mm-hmm. Beautiful colored markers. And I'm sitting next to a guy in his cubicle. He's also selling these pens. We have the same base salary. We should be paid the same amount of money for the work that we're doing. But we're probably coming toward the work a little differently. I'm attracting the business. He's producing the business. I'm getting more into the, hey, wow, do you have kids? What's going on? Do your kids need these pretty markers? Oh, well, you need the fat ones because they're little kids. And he's probably going, dude, the way the marker works, it's really awesome. It's a different come from. Okay. So now I told you that difference. You're probably saying, yeah, so what's so? Well, what do you do about it? And I bet you anyone who's listening is going to get this from the bedroom to the boardroom. We're going to start with, well, do I have time to tell a little story about
Oh my
what not
gosh,
to
we
do?
got time. Please
Okay,
do.
I'm going to tell probably one of the most powerful stories, and I'm going to use my former husband, who's a very good friend of mine, very proud of that. And we had this lovely home. I had a dinner party, and the deal was, unless it was, in the summer and it was grilling, because he was the griller, I cooked and he cleaned the dishes. It just was the deal. He wasn't a cook.
Yeah.
So that
Good
was the deal.
combo. I do the same.
It's just, and some guys cook, and I know my sister, he's the cook. Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's the deal. Whatever deal you make, good to talk about those deals though, right? Communication's everything. So I cooked a big dinner. We had a blast. We were in great shape. There was no argument. We were just in wonderful shape. And guests left. And I'm not one of these people that cleans up along the way. And I had a really big kitchen, and they were literally trashed. It was like stuff everywhere, pots, pans, crumbs, everything. So I went upstairs to kick back. He's clanging and banging and clanging and banging and clanging and banging. And finally I decided I was really looking forward to snuggling, So I went downstairs and I walked into the kitchen. I want you to try to picture this. It was a big kitchen, and I had a big wooden butcher block between the door that where I entered the kitchen, and he was on the other side of the wooden butcher block at the sink. There was a drying rack that had all the pots and pans in it. He turned the dishwasher on. The counters everything was put away, and he was reaching for the light switch, and he had, I usually have a prop. Shoot.
Where's that org?
Imagine a dish towel in my hand. Okay. So I'll just this will do for now. So let's say this is a dish towel. Okay. So I walk in the kitchen and I look at him, and this is what I said. Mind you, he had cleaned up a major epic mess. And what do I see? Crumbs all over the butcher block, and crumbs all over the poorly planned black granite counters, okay? So he's clearly ready to be done. He's turning off the light. This is what came out of my mouth. Can't you wipe the counters before you come up?
Oh, no.
And you say, oh, no, because clearly what did I do?
Yeah.
I didn't acknowledge him. Right? So here was his response. I won't use the B word but he goes, you B, called me the B word. He goes, you B, and threw the dish towel down. That's what the prompt's for. He threw the dish towel down, and he goes, you teach this stuff. And he went upstairs, he went into his den, which was our TV room, slammed the door, and slept in the guest room. And I completely deserved it. I couldn't even say I'm sorry. I literally blew it.
Mm-hmm.
I blew it. And it was like, oh, great. Now, let's wind it back for a minute. And I'm saying this because it's about production. And I'm also giving you my number one communication tip, which is called artful communication. Okay?
Oh, okay. We got a lot that you need to describe for us.
These are my two biggest things, and it's like nobody ever remembers them. But I promise if you remember these, you can transform your relationships, all your relationships.
Mm-hmm. Okay. If you have that notepad, you might want to keep it around then for this.
Write down artful, A-R-T. Okay? So let's cycle it back. I'm upstairs. There's the clanging and banging. I come inside. You've got the picture. I've got the butcher block in front of me covered with crumbs all over the counter. He's done. He's putting down the dish towel. And what if I said to him, instead of, can't you wipe the counters? What if I said, oh my gosh, thank you. You have cleaned up my unbelievable epic mess. Thank you, honey. Would you be willing to wipe the counters before you come upstairs? Thank you.
Totally changes it. Yeah.
Right. Because I just did A-R-T. I acknowledged him. Wow. Great job cleaning up my epic mess. Okay. And then I made a request. Would you be willing to wipe the counters?
Mm-hmm.
And number 3, I said, thank you for hearing the request, not for doing it. So I appreciated him for the cleanup. I requested that he do the counters as well. And I said, thank you for hearing the request. Mm. That would have been a way to do it. A-R-T, in which case he could have then said, sure. But either way, we would have been sleeping together that night, okay?
Right. Even if
So
you
that
said no, you'd say, okay, I'll do it. And then go
right,
on your
and
merry
that's
way.
basically that's door number like a game show. Vanna White, door number one, door number two, door number three. So door number one was what not to do. Clearly, right?
Hmm.
Got burned by the dragon. Door number two was use artful, which is great job. Could you do this? Thank you.
Hmm.
Appreciate request. Thank him for hearing it. Door number three, in this case, would have been like most guys, just really, they don't even see crumbs. Door number three could have been, great job, honey. See you in a minute. And let him go upstairs and clean the counters myself. Because you know what? The guy didn't notice crumbs. 10 years I've been with him at that point. He didn't notice crumbs. Guess what I don't notice? The air in my tires, the fact that honey, my computer's booting up really slowly. Babe, you've got photos all over, not in folders. Oh, he told me that many. I don't see that. We all look through life with different lenses. So men
Right.
and women look through life with different lenses. Okay.
Hmm.
So I just told you the differences. So, and then another story I'll tell you in a minute about the women thing. But do you have any questions about this? Is that clear, Abby?
I think you've explained it so clearly.
Okay. Can you imagine translating artful to the bedroom?
Oh, for sure. I think
He's
too, it's like we expect people to read our minds in the bedroom. You
That's
know,
the other thing. Men cannot read our minds. We can read theirs sort of because it's not quite as complex in the bedroom for them. Let's face it.
yeah, yeah, for most.
Their bodies are not as complex in the bedroom. Let's face it.
Yeah, that
Their
is
their
definitely.
orgasms are not as complex. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, but
Okay?
yeah, it is interesting. Like we do, I mean, I think men and women in partnerships,
I
we
think you
expect
just
people
froze,
to read
Abby.
our minds and know exactly what we want
Shoot.
at all times. But, that realistically is never going to happen for you. So that's where these skills can really come in and help
Right.
you because hoping someone's going to read your mind, you're going to be disappointed.
Right. And let's say that, we're new together, or even he's just not thinking because I know he used to love having his back scratched. I only like my back scratched if I have an itch. Otherwise, don't use your nails. It's not my thing.
Hmm.
Right? But he would absent-mindedly start using his nails. Ew, I hate using your nails. Not a nice way to speak to somebody. When they're
Hmm.
trying to make you feel good, they're just not paying attention. So what if I can remember to do artful, which would be something like, ooh, I love that you want me to feel good and that we're taking this time to cuddle. Honey, would you mind using the pads of your fingers instead?
Hmm.
Thank you.
There you go.
Because every time we go, ew, or go, what about the counters? We're being very emasculating.
Hmm. Do you feel like for a lot of people that you teach this to, does it take a while for them to kind of catch on to this? Because it might not really seem natural
It
initially.
doesn't take a while, it takes forever. Because I'm working with a woman right now and they have an at-risk relationship, frankly, and I'm bringing in a guy colleague of mine to work with the two of them together again because I
Hmm.
want him to feel balanced. But she will tell me the conversation she had, and I like, how'd that work for you? It didn't. Did you use Artful? Oh, I forgot. Exactly. It's the same thing as you teach this stuff, meaning you can't take it for granted. And Abby, I don't know how long you've been with your husband, but when you're brand new and in that honeymoon stage, we're still saying please and thank you and honey and ooh. But eventually that honeymoon stage, start having kids. You're doing money together. You're doing life together. The irritations can build if we don't have communication skill sets that teach us how to go through the different things. And, it's really important to be able to keep the honeymoon going by keeping the decks clear. And it's all about communication. So I just want to teach you my easiest one, which is artful.
Right. And I think that is so key. And yeah, I've been married for 7 months. So, we're still very new, but something that we committed to as we got married, and I've always been kind of transparent about my relationship too, and happy to chat about this, is that we have agreed to have a couples therapist together because if something comes up, we want to have that person. And even though we are in that honeymoon phase, it's good to have these tools so you know how to face things when something does come up.
Well, I like that you're doing it
Mhm.
preemptively because
Right, because people do it when
therapy
it,
or coaching
oh,
doesn't have to
yeah,
happen because something's wrong.
exactly. And I
How
think we
about,
view that
yeah,
as like, okay, things are bad. And sometimes it's when people come to a matchmaker. It's like, okay, nothing else has worked. I'm done. I can't even handle dating. And then they come to me. I'm like, couldn't you have come to me 6 months ago?
Tell me about it. And it's like, people go to marriage therapy because something's wrong. And I think therapy has its place, particularly because I know this couple that I'm working with, they have therapists, each of them, and they have a couples therapist. I'm thrilled. I don't need to talk about the mother that was whatever and the father that was ever. I can come right into teaching them communication skill sets and intimacy issues and teach them how to do the man-woman thing, which the therapist may or may not be good at.
Right, because that's a little, more into the coaching space rather than the therapy space.
Well, that's why I call myself an educator and a coach.
Yeah.
I mean, it's because I teach people, and I'm not going to just say, well, what do you think you should do? Let me teach you what to do. Now practice it.
Exactly.
So.
I like it. And hold them accountable too. So should we talk about sex now? We did men, or do we have other things that we should talk about in the men category?
Can they cross over?
They could cross over. Yeah.
My favorite. I do want to tell you one more story that's hysterical, which I think will really help. And if there's any guys listening to this or women, look at your recorder at where this is in the minutes and play this part for them. So just like I need to learn to do artful about his production, he has to know that. So one of our teachers said, listen, man, we were doing a class with him, and he said, next time, anyway, he said, this is what you need to do when you're getting ready to go out to a fancy thing. So my ex took notes and whatever. So I'd forgotten about that conversation. It's maybe a year later.
Wow.
We're getting ready to go out. I got PMS. I feel kind of chubby, and I don't know what to wear. And it's like I lived out in Sonoma County. I didn't get dressed up very often. Would the dress even fit, And I said, hey, honey, I got to get ready. He came into the bedroom. He sat on the edge of the bed. He reached into his pocket and he took out that piece of paper from that course and he opened his notes and he literally read the script and it still worked. Okay.
What was the script?
Dear, I know we're getting ready to go. Do you have a couple of choices in your closet you'd like to run by me so I can help you feel great tonight?
Oh,
he never in 1,000 years would have thought to do that himself. Okay. So he's literally reading this. And I went, absolutely. Da-da, da-da-da. And I tried this on, I tried that on. And he got me to see that, well, you'll probably, da-da-da-da. You feel better in that one. Great. Do you know how long that took? 2.5 minutes?
Right.
3. As long as it took me to go like this and put one dress down and put the other one on. That's how long it took. And then guess what he could do? Putter around the house, play with the cats, get ready, groom himself. And it was no big deal. And that was the point. Put your attention on her so that because if she doubts her attractiveness, help her out preemptively. Otherwise, she's going to come in, honey, kind of like the little kid, pay attention to me. And honey, what do you think of this? I'm brushing my teeth. Yeah, but multitask. Well, I'm a guy. Get the picture?
I totally get it. Yeah, that's.
Do you know how funny that was? That it didn't matter that he got the script, but
right.
He remembered?
I mean, hey, who cares if it works? I mean, who's judging? Okay,
so sex.
Yeah,
I was not avoiding it. What about it?
Yeah, what kind of insight can you give us? Obviously we talked about there are obvious differences between men and women in terms of sex. What are some of the biggest things that you communicate to young women that you're working with and feel like they should know when they're approaching, adult dating?
I love it. So first of all, whether it's the men and women conversation, the sex and intimacy conversation, or the money and lifestyle conversation, all of it is about being clear about what you desire.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And so when we talk about, since we're honing in on the sex and the intimacy, number one, your pleasure. Ladies, listen. You don't need to write this down. Just listen. Your pleasure is your responsibility. Your interpretation of a soft touch, a hard touch, a spank, a slap, a this kiss, a that kiss, it's your interpretation. What do you like? And let me backtrack for a second. I'm going to tell you my favorite word in the English language. Ready? It's a word that you probably haven't thought about in this context, and you have, Abby, because you're a matchmaker. Research. Mm-hmm. So you got to do some research. You got to do some research. If you're dating, you got to look, maybe it's this app and it's calling a matchmaker and you're doing research. This kind of person, that kind of person. Oh, I like this kind of a first date better. Let's do coffee rather than wine. Whatever. It's research. And you know what? If something's really gnarly, it's good research. You won't do it again.
Exactly.
Right?
Wait, so
It's a
what about,
research.
yeah, what about when it
Research
comes to
says
sex? Do you want to do research in sex? Are you saying we should
that's
sleep
right.
around?
Well, it depends if you didn't have the 70s, so maybe not. But it was very different then because we didn't have AIDS. We didn't have the same kind of deadly diseases. It was
So
a
STDs
different,
weren't as big of a thing back then?
no,
Wow. The
no.
glory days.
Well, they existed,
Yeah.
but I don't remember having, elevator pitches and having to tell somebody. And I mean, it just was a different thing. Okay. But
Right.
with sex, I think, again, start out with knowing what you like. Start out with knowing what you like. Start out with, if you don't have a partner, listen, if you want to email me and tell me what you're up to, we can have a conversation or text me and we'll be providing them with a link to me. Is that right, Abby?
Oh, of course. We'll say that all
Yeah.
at the end. It'll be in the show
Okay, good.
notes.
Well, right.
All
I'm not giving, right. But I mean, if you want to talk to me at any time, I kind of consider myself not only a coach and educator, but a concierge because I know the best books about orgasm and I can send you the links about this kind of orgasm and that kind of orgasm. But really, it's about, and even in this little book, you don't have to be divorced to have this little book. It's because it's a handbook of how do you start over. And you might be starting over after college. You might be starting over after a breakup. You might be starting over after a really painful research project. So that relationship was a research. I got a lot of 20-somethings text me and they'll say, need to tell you about some research I did last night. And I'm like, ooh, that party you went to, how was it? Ew, he was at this. Good research. Or yum, good research. You see? So the first thing is with any kind of sex or sensuality conversation, first of all, sensuality goes on top of it all, whether it's yummy, gooey chocolate drizzled on your favorite ice cream, or whether it's the smell of a wonderful rose, or whether it's, some lotion or a scent or whatever. All of it's sensual. Touch is sensual. Sexuality is sensual. So it's about sensuality, and because sexuality and sensuality are not equivalent. Because sensuality might be you're stroking your child's back, or you're patting your cat. And they're like, I think that cats and dogs in our society get way more massages than we do.
I
right?
think so. It's not fair. Yeah.
It's not fair. Well, they've got a racket going for sure.
Right.
So anyway, so it's like, but when it comes to sex, you've got to really decide because what might be okay with me is not okay with you. And somebody might want to say it's okay to have a friend with benefits, and somebody else is like, I'm waiting for the one. For me, I like having a lover. I may or may not find the one anytime soon. You know what? The only organ in human anatomy that has no other purpose other than pleasure is the clitoris. So you might as well get clitorate, as Mama Gina says. You might as well get literate about your clitoris. Meaning, and it's like you might as well learn that the clitoris, even though it's this small little, the head of your clit, if you go inside your vagina and do the come here motion kind of on the other side of about 2 inches below your navel, there's a spot called the G spot, named after some guy named Grafenberg or something.
Named after a man. What the hell?
Man, whatever. But here's the truth. Good for him for helping us find it.
I guess.
Name it.
Yeah.
But it's a little almond shaped. It's harder to get to by yourself. But that's really the other side of the clitoris. So you need to learn this stuff. I'm happy to share I didn't bring it with me today, silly me, but I actually have a pussy puppet, Yasmina, my yoni puppet. And she's about this big and purple velvet and all that. We use that in Men's Sex and Money quite a bit. You don't need people to get embarrassed, right? But it's pretty hilarious. When I pull that out working with a male client, they're like,
excuse me. Yeah.
Right. Because it's, it's about this big. It's definitely larger than life and it's purple and pink and sumptuous and velvet and it's anatomically correct. But, the idea is use a mirror, find out, who are you? What do you like? Use a feather. Do you like it light? I'm so grateful I'm not ticklish because for me, a tickling, teasing touch is tantalizing. Oh, I got it out. First try. It's tantalizing. Whereas for somebody else, they're like, ooh, ooh, and it doesn't feel good.
Right.
But you got to find out somehow. And also, why not have a research partner?
There you go.
Why
as long
not?
as you're having consent and all those good things and feel comfortable.
And here's the other thing, Abby, particularly talking to younger women, having sex does not equal having intercourse. having a sexual connection with someone, there's a whole lot you can do and not to have to go all the way.
Mm-hmm.
You can have the most yummy date that's just about kissing and rubbing and getting hot on each other fully clothed. You might want to set about, and know, by the way, when you're going out on a date, whether it's your first, second, third, 10th, 12th date, know what your boundaries are. Call a coach, call a woman in your women's circle, call a matchmaker, call whatever, and say, would you help me figure my boundaries out?
Mm-hmm. I talk
And
about that all the time. It's so important
that's
to know
right.
it before you go on the date, because then when you're in that situation, you're like, oh, we're at home at his house together. What's
That's
going
right.
to happen? You want to
Right.
know, like, what are you okay with? What are you not okay with?
Right. And to literally say to somebody, I just want you, like for me, not that long ago, it was like, I don't actually feel like we're partner material, but I kind of like the chemistry and I'd be willing to see you again and maybe we can be friend with benefits. That's me.
Mm-hmm.
That's me. A lot of women aren't able to do that. I don't have to have intercourse with that friend with benefits. We might just say it's been a long pandemic. Can we just have a hugging date?
Just
It
hug for
sounds
3 hours.
Just hold each other and hug. I actually know a friend who just got a certification in cuddle parties. They're a thing.
What?
And it's
Okay,
not,
tell me more about that.
look it up. I promise. Look up cuddle parties. And my guess is they come through Denver sometimes, Abby. It's called a cuddle party and it's not sexual. And it's all about consent and learning how to ask, may I touch your arm? Yes. And it's all about, it's not even, it's tantric, but it's clothed in like pajama type things, meaning comfortable. But it's
Mm-hmm.
clothed. It's not about sex. It might be sexy. You might feel sexy because you're not used to being touched at all. If you're single and you've been lonely, and this pandemic has really nailed all of us. Okay,
Oh,
a lot of singles, it's even more lonely. So,
mm-hmm.
but sincerely, cuddle parties are a thing. And so there's ways, I just want everybody to know that sex and intimacy is a giant conversation. And sex does
Yeah.
not mean PV sex.
Mm-hmm.
It means, how about it's coming from your pleasure? What's pleasurable? Because I know most women in their 20s that I've talked to that are in like committed relationships, they do not enjoy intercourse with their boyfriends or their husbands. You know why? Because they don't know anything about their own anatomy. They haven't
Mm-hmm.
taken time to say, look, I don't want to just have sex with you. I want to use this book that Karen recommended, and I want to take this online class or whatever, or just watch these things. I want you to learn about my body. I want us to learn. We can use some coconut oil or some other lubricant, and please learn how to touch me. And I want you to keep your clothes on while you do that. I want you to learn how to touch me and not have to be like, and just like jumping into the chemistry, which is wonderful also. But how
Right.
wonderful would it be if it's just all about one of your pleasures at a time? It's very
Yeah.
hard to administer, let's say, a blowjob on a guy while you're receiving your pleasure.
It-
How? You need another person there, and that's a whole nother podcast.
That's definitely, I think we could have like 10 episodes with
That's
all
a
the ideas I'm getting right
polyamory.
now.
That's a threesome. That's a whole different conversation. Swinger and what's polyamory and what's tantric. They're
Yeah.
all different bodies of work and nuanced. But
Right.
all I'm talking about right now is there's no right, wrong. But you as a woman, you as a man, it's your job to get really clear about what gives you pleasure. It's your job.
Mhm. I like it. And I
And
think
learn
it's
how to ask for it.
right. And I almost think it's something, I mean, in my mind, I'm like, is this something that they could teach in your health class, But maybe not, because then it would encourage, high school kids to have sex, and we wouldn't want that. But, it's interesting that it's like kind of this elusive thing that we never really learn about, like pleasure or how to do that for one another. And it's something that you figure out, or maybe you don't. Maybe you figure it out when you're 25 or when you're 65. Um,
Oh, I know plenty of women in their 50s and 60s who've never had orgasms with somebody else helping them, and they've just never known how to do that because they didn't have a trained partner. They didn't learn enough about their own bodies. They were too embarrassed to ask. Maybe it was a religious upbringing that suppressed their desire, et
mhm.
cetera, et cetera. And I actually have, I have a list somewhere of I said courses that should be taught in high school and college, and they're kissing 101, how to date, how to say no. I mean, it's all of it. And they're like
Yeah.
101, 201. And it's like, you said something interesting. You said, no, we don't encourage high school kids to have sex. No, I don't think anyone should be encouraged to have intercourse. But I do wish in a perfect world that when our bodies start to wake up and we go through puberty, that in a perfect world, and I'm not an advocate, please don't misunderstand me, you people out there. I'm not saying this should happen. In a different environment, why are we not learning about pleasure and having our elders and having teachers, especially like what I do, teach us about how we like to be stroked and how to ask for it? And why wouldn't that be something that happened when we were 15 and 16 and 17? And then you wait for the sperm donor and the egg for when that's a really the right thing to do. But meaning, why can't we learn to do sensual exploration beforehand instead of groping in dark cars in the night? You know. So
I feel like maybe in other countries that could be something, but I feel like in the US, I don't know. There's
it's
too
not.
much.
It's not anywhere. It's a real religious base. Most
Right.
places. Yeah.
Yeah. So we could have a
I'm.
whole other podcast about that topic too,
We
but I
could.
want to make sure we get to the money
Okay.
segment of what we were talking about: men, sex, and money. So, obviously there's money can come into play. I mean, it comes into play on a first date, who's going to pay? Are we splitting? And then of course is one of finances are the number one reason for divorce as well. So, can you kind of shed some light on, money and, how someone can approach that in a good way in a relationship and be clear about what they're looking for in that realm without feeling weird about it?
Absolutely. I'm going to
Mhm.
get back to you've got to be clear what you desire.
Right. It all comes back to it. I figured.
You've got to be clear that if you want to be with somebody who has an advanced degree, like in as a professional, such as a lawyer or a doctor or whatever, and with the commensurate salary from that education, then don't date someone who comes from a contractor family because you won't share values. Money, and this could be religious values. And my mom used to say something cool. She said, the more you have in common, the easier it is. And the way I put that is it's cultural, it's socioeconomic strata, it's religion, it's look at I'm from New England, and even though I've been in California for way longer than I was in New England, you can't take the New England out of me. I'm from the Northeast. I've got an edge. I like this. I like the banter and the sarcasm.
Hmm.
And it's just languages in common. When I meet someone from New York, it's just, or Boston, where I'm from, it's just
Right.
comfortable.
I see
They
it
get
in
it.
dating all
I
the
remember moving to
time.
California and it
People who
was
move to Denver from New
right.
York, they have trouble connecting with some people here.
That's right.
Hmm.
It's cultural. And then I wonder how people can possibly be with people from a whole nother country. First of all, we're already men and women. That's already
Hmm.
two different species. Seriously, sincerely. But then on top of that, to be with someone who comes from a totally different socioeconomic strata. I remember a young woman, she was in her 20s and she was dating a guy like 5 years older than she was, but he was massively successful. Like he was a multi-millionaire from creating a high-tech company in his 20s and selling it to Microsoft or something. So they were going to some fundraiser. And I mean, she was so embarrassed. It was like a $5,000 plate thing. I mean, he was just really wealthy. And she was like, she was a grad
Hmm.
student and a waitress. She knew nothing about money. And I think he took her shopping. He goes, let's get you something to wear for that. And he like spent more on a blouse for her. And she felt so guilty to receive it because her ability to receive
Hmm.
was this big and she needed to open up, it's like, or not to open up, but she couldn't receive it. She broke up with him.
Hmm.
She couldn't handle it. So I think it's really important that if you want to have a certain lifestyle, don't say yes to somebody who's not going to be able to provide that with you. I don't mean for you. I'm not being sexist here. If you yourself have gone to law school and you know you're going to make several $100,000 a year and you want to be with somebody who doesn't, I mean, my stepson's a perfect example. He has a big career. He wanted to be with somebody with a big career because to own a home in Oakland, California, and raise a family, you need two big
Hmm.
careers to afford that. And that's what they have. And I remember trying to fix him up with somebody who wasn't doing that because I just thought they'd be a great pair. And he said, I can't. It's not going to fit my goals. But how clear is that? And then you set your boundaries, and for me, those are money
Right. I mean, I have
conversations.
a client right now who's a similar example. Both his parents have graduate degrees and he has a graduate degree. Everyone in his family either went to med school or law school.
Right.
So, when he's with someone who doesn't have an advanced degree, like that is something that he really wants. Not that even some people who have advanced degrees, could be super intelligent or some may not.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's his
Exactly.
value. It's a value that was so instilled in him. And I know I'm educated, and unless somebody was so self-taught, it would be probably unusual for me to be with someone who didn't have
Hmm.
at least a college degree. Just because, again, it's a particular way of life, and I don't want to be with anyone who hasn't
And
traveled
that's
somewhat
another
globally
value.
because
Yeah.
they don't have the. For me, it
Hmm.
really is. It's a value, and so it's. But back to the whole money conversation is number one. Get so clear about your own desires around that, which is one of them is, we didn't talk about it, but I mean, you work with a lot of younger women who are wanting to start families. I don't care if you don't want a child yet because you're 26. But get freaking clear if you're going to have one, because if you're going to be working with a matchmaker or online dating or whatever you're doing, you need to
Hmm.
know if you're going to have one. It's one of the single biggest decisions of your life. And it doesn't matter if you have one or don't have one, but it does matter if you get
Right. And
clear.
I think sometimes what I run into a lot with people is they're like, I'm open. It kind of depends on the person I meet, which I actually will say I kind of appreciate because it kind of does depend on that person if you're open in that way.
Well, they're open, but I think it's also can be a little bit too of a default setting versus I am clear that I want a
Mm,
child and I would like to be somebody else who's clear they want a child.
right. I mean, and that just makes it
You see what I
easier.
mean? And then you find out if
Yeah.
it's the
In
right
terms of
person.
dating, because you're like, okay, I know
Right.
exactly what I'm looking for. Um,
Right.
and yeah.
But I mean, I remember I was working with someone, she became a client, and we were talking about, she was in her early 30s. And we got to talking, and I said, so do you want to have a child? Because she was telling me about a relationship. She goes, well, I don't know. I'd be open to it. She had a great childhood. I asked her a few questions. She had a great childhood. So it wasn't like she had a horrible experience of
Hmm.
being, and she said that, yeah, but my boyfriend, he was adopted and he's really anti-kids. And I was like, huh, asked her a few more questions. Next thing I knew, she was sobbing in my arms. She broke up with him that night and went with someone else briefly. And then she met her guy a year later and called me. And I'm actually featured in the last chapter of a young women's leadership book that she wrote as one of her angels, because I took her to the mat and said, you can't be with him if you think you want a child. Stop now. And I vote with young people, don't get into it,
Hmm.
don't. Or if somebody says they're really clear that they want to buy a boat or they want to do this every time, just get clear about what you desire. And that's, you want to be a stay-at-home mom and you don't want to work, so what?
Hmm.
Be clear. Not when you're pregnant,
Right. Be clear
like we were
before
saying
that.
before. And I think it's okay to, when somebody asks you out, because it's tricky even on who's going to pay for the first date. I definitely do not reach for I reach for my wallet when I'm really clear there's not an attraction. I said, let
Hmm.
me contribute. Or when the guy grabs the bill, I'll say, depending on the energy and depending on if it's an expensive meal, I'll say, would you like me to contribute? Oh God, no, I've got this. Thank you. I really
Hmm.
appreciate being treated. But when somebody invites me to go to dinner instead of a coffee, I might say, are you inviting to treat me to
Right. Just
dinner?
set the boundary right there.
I am so grateful. And then you're not wondering if you should run to the restroom when it's time for when the check comes. We all have nightmare stories we've heard,
Oh,
right, Abby?
we have them for sure.
So I think the more you say, the better. And I know a lot of young people in particular, and you probably deal with quite a lot of younger women who are trying to get their life partner and have families and stuff. They're afraid to say what they want. And I can tell you, if you are so freaking clear about what you want, then be so freaking clear about expressing it. Get someone like Abby or myself to help you say it in a kind,
And then you're
clear
going to
way.
attract that person so much more easily. If you're like, oh, they could be this, they could be that, I don't know. Then you're going to attract all the I don't
That's right.
knows rather than the hell yeses.
That's right. And why would you want to spend 6 months falling in love with someone only to find out that you don't share values or a deep desire like
Right?
having a
That's a
child?
big one.
And also, I mean, oh, by the way, I do look at, with all of the relationship stuff, I look at what are your absolute must-haves, what are your absolute deal breakers, and what are your
I do the
preferences.
exact same thing. You and I are just like-minded in all of this. I love it.
And the preferences, we got to be a little careful about it. because the preferences can go into the I have to be with someone who skis. And I use the word skiing on purpose because
And
I'm a
we have a
skier.
lot of audience
You
in
know what?
Colorado.
Winter is right. I think you better. I heard Denver referred to as Menver. So let me know.
We'll have to do a whole other episode about that one too, because I agree, yes and
Okay.
no. But
Okay. Well, I'm in a different generation too, so we'll have to talk. But anyway, what I was going to say is it's more fun for me to be with someone who skis. I'll have more fun in the winter.
you could be like me. I
But the
taught
truth
my
is,
husband
it's
to
not
ski, so that was fine.
right. And he's still young enough to learn. But at my age, I don't. They probably don't ski because they don't have the knees for it
You got to get the
anymore.
knee replacements, and then you teach him.
It's a different thing. So where I'm coming from is, while it's a preference to be with someone who skis, it's not a deal breaker. It's not like I own a ski resort or a race or something. It's just a preference. But you got to be really careful. I want a man who's, 6 foot tall with this color hair and this color eyes and makes this much money and he's a lawyer. What if you meet him and he's 1 or 2 inches taller or shorter, maybe he's semi-balding, but he has beautiful other color eyes and he does this profession. And he's like, hello, knocking on your door. Are you going to be so stuck on it has to look? And that's the difference between expectations and being in the expectancy. And that's a great distinction. I expect it to look just like this instead of I have the expectancy to be really turned on and attracted. And
exactly. And I think we have that luxury as women that we can be attracted to many different types of people, and even men too. I've seen it. I know sometimes men physically are a little more particular or they know right away, but I've seen it. Yes, or having a type, but attraction, with women really can grow as you get to know a guy. So you should give that person a chance that maybe you're on the fence about.
Have you ever noticed how people can get so much better looking when they're being treated beautifully in a relationship? I know that it's just people look good on each other, or they don't.
And then when you break up, you look back and you're like, what was I thinking? But in the moment, you're like, whew, that was great.
Yeah, it shifts. It shifts. But most of all, to leave it with communication. Right. Learn what is yours, what's true for you, and learn how to communicate that kindly.
Perfect way to end our episode. We have just one more thing. I need you to share where people can get in touch with you, call you, follow you, go to your website, read your book. Give us all the places they can interact with you.
Thank you. Well, probably, I'm on all kinds of social media, but you can always find me under Karen Solomon, SOLOMON, and Karen Solomon on Instagram, on Clubhouse, kind of everywhere. But KarenSolomon.com is a place where you can get to my landing page. I get some freebies. If you're coupled, I got some juicy tips for you. And if you're single, I've got some great dating tips. So you can, and you'll get on my mailing list. And if you want to, you can find a link to my calendar so we can have a strategy session. I do one-on-one coaching. I'm very excited to collaborate with you down the road, Abby. And we're going to be bringing men's sex and money out into the world. Again, it's been a while since I've done that. We'll probably have a membership site. And basically it's going to be a really great way because you know what, there's nothing more powerful to me than helping young women create a very beautiful tribe of sisters that support each other without competition.
Right.
So that's another thing. So yeah, I think KarenSolomon.com is the best way to find me. And Clubhouse, Single in the City, and a bunch of other rooms. Just find me on Clubhouse and ring my bell, and then you'll get notifications. And Insta, it's all over the place.
Perfect. And we'll put all that in the show notes so people can just copy, paste, click, and go there.
You.
Karen, thank you so much for spending time with me and sharing your wisdom with our listeners. I know they'll appreciate it.